Well, welcome everyone. My name is Tushti, and this is my husband Surendra. And we have our comrade Rick. So, when I read the reading from the commentary this morning, I sort of got this scene in my mind of Jesus standing there and his disciples seated all around him, and then the townspeople gather up beyond that. And his words that day, as we heard in the reading, were pretty strong. It'd give one reason to pause. And then I just had this vision of the townspeople slowly sort of backing away, looking at each other saying, he's having a really bad day. He's asking us to take up a sword against our families, our friends, and our loved ones. Those words that he used that day were just plucking at the strings of their hearts, at the strings of attachment, and the strings that entangle the ego and reinforce it. The sword that Jesus was speaking of course, was a sword of discrimination, of non-attachment, and impersonal love. So this whole thing of desire is an interesting topic. We can be very strong in our desires, in our discriminations, and then it can be whisked away in a moment. And I'll give you a true and simple story. I was walking down the street with a friend after having a very satisfying and lovely dinner. And we just happened to walk past an ice cream parlor. So you sort of know where this is going. We sort of looked at each other, and then we looked inside, and our discrimination went out the window. Neither one of us were hungry. But we looked inside, and we saw this long list of flavors. And over here was an equally long list of toppings to choose from. Now, before we knew it, we were standing in front of the counter placing our order, and our discrimination had just gone away. Now, as simple as this story is, take out the words ice cream and put in any other desire, and the same thing can happen. And Swamiji in the Gita explains this reaction to us, and he was using a poem by Wordsworth, and it read, "My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky." And I'm sure we've probably all had similar experiences. Now what happens next is the rainbow fades away. That upward flow, that leap of energy will still continue for a little while, but then it too is going to fade away. And Swami cautions us about these leaps of energy because, they are usually in more of an outflowing of our energy, more than upward. Now we know that an upward movement of energy is desirable and actually necessary on our spiritual path. But Maya, this world of delusion that we live in, and then we have this discrimination that is already tainted by the duality of the delusion. So the key then is to watch the heart's feelings. As we do in meditation, we watch the movement of the breath. It's calm, and we're non-attached to it. So we want to become the observer of the heart. And another example given in our reading of Master and Amar wanting to run away to the Himalayas, intercepted by their older brothers. They have sort of a pause, but Master still wants to steal away to Rishikesh. But Amar, seeing his older brother, has changed his mind because of familiar warmth. Now, we become very attached to our heart's feelings and those warm and fuzzies, to our likes and our dislikes. The only thing is, it can lead into a cycle, an unending cycle. It goes something like this. Our likes and dislikes lead to cravings. And when we don't get what we want, especially, 2-year-olds, and then when we get bigger, it leads to frustration because we didn't get what we wanted. Frustration then leads to anger. I should have had that job. I should have gotten that opportunity. And then the anger leads to delusion, and we get drawn into the idea that our happiness comes from outside of ourselves rather than from inside. The delusion leads to forgetfulness. We forget who we are and why we're here. And the forgetfulness, we just have lost it in a certain expression of it, and it leads to disappointment, pain, and suffering. So, coming back to what Jesus said to those who had ears to hear, was that nothing is worth clinging to other than our love for God, for all else will indeed disappoint us. Now, had he also said at the same time, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you, they might have understood a little bit better. Master Yogananda teaches us our sole purpose, or I'll say our soul's purpose, is to know God and to love God. To all else, our love should be impersonal. And what that means is that we love the God within them, which is always there and in the hearts of everyone. And when I first came to Ananda, I had a little hard time grasping that idea. How do you love someone impersonally? And then, now, 12 years later, I have a better understanding. Impersonal love is calm. It's not reactive. So when our loved ones push those buttons, we just still love the God within them, that spark of the divine. Now, we might still sort of want to gently wring their necks, but we still love the God in them. You know, and if we're so upset, we ask God to love them through us. And so, you know, God is sort of our backdrop for all that we do. And then the love or the energy can rise calmly and not pour out in emotion and heart-wrenching, you know, the things that happen when we get just too steeped in the whole event. You know, when I was on seclusion, I read a very little book, and I highly recommend it. It's titled The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. I think his whole title was Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection. And he lived in the 17th century. And as a young man, he was actually a soldier. And then I think it was like in his mid to late 20s, he joined the Carmelite order in Paris. And there he served for many, many years. And he started out as the cook. And he cooked, and then he had actually a physical ailment that left him crippled. And he couldn't walk very well. He had trouble standing, so he became the sandal maker. And, you know, I think it was he lived into his 80s. And he was considered a mystic of his time. And his advice to people, get used to offering your hearts to God whenever and as often as you can. Get used to it. You know, we have to practice that presence. You know, when we offer ourselves to God in even the very smallest ways, God is pleased. Well, because we're His children. You know, talk to God, talk to Divine Mother, as if he or she were your best friend, because indeed she is. You know, she doesn't judge us. She knows everything about us, and sometimes you sort of wish she didn't, but she does. But she doesn't judge, and she's always loving to us. You know, actually when Surendra and I were in seclusion, when we went up to visit Swamiji to celebrate his 60th year of discipleship to Yogananda, and actually many of you were there, he just gave so much to us. You know, even though his physical body was challenging him once again, and do keep him in your prayers, he's getting stronger again. But when he looked out at us, we felt his love. And, you know, many of us he does not know personally, and yet you felt in your heart his love for us. And it was just so endearing. You know, he saw the God's light, that spark of the divine within us as he looked out at us. And he's an inspiration and a living example for us all. When we give ourselves to God, then we'll feel His presence ever more closely to us. You know, each week before Sunday service, we offer the fire and purification ceremony. And it's a wonderful opportunity to offer ourselves back, to offer the seeds of our karma, our doubts and our fears into the flames of discrimination and God's light. And it's so simple. I seek purification by the grace of God, inviting God into our lives and asking for the divine light to be illuminated within us. Now we, like spiritual warriors, we have to start from where we're standing and fight the battles we can win, one step at a time. And, I actually invite you in the next week, between this Sunday and next, or even between today and tomorrow, to just ask yourself, what can I do to practice the presence of God? That's your sword. It could be the very smallest thing, remembering to offer a prayer of gratitude before you take your meal. If you go for a walk and pass someone's house, offer a blessing to the people who live inside. Practice japa, repeating the names of the masters or God in your heart silently throughout the day. And at the end of the day, give it all back. Everything you are, everything you have, just lovingly offer it onto the altar of God's love. Now, Jesus also said, "Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God." Now, it takes courage, but we're never alone. And if we remember our prayer from today, problems cannot exist, Lord, as long as thou art near. Give me the strength always to hold thee in my heart. God bless.
As Tushti mentioned, and as I'm sure you noticed, our reading today, in particular, the quotation from Jesus is really quite a zinger. Talk of a sword of family members set against one another. This is not the gentle Jesus that we normally see him pictured to be. Think not that I come to send peace on earth, he says. I come to set a man at variance with his father. Well, taken out of context, this hardly sounds like a proper Christian teaching. But of course, the message, the true message and meaning lies at a depth much deeper than just the literal words, the surface. It's a reference, as Tushti mentioned, to the myriad material desires, the habits that we love to indulge, the worldly attachments, all those citizens of our egoic personalities that must be subdued if we are to merge again into infinite light. This is the teaching of the great battle of the Bhagavad Gita. It is that, of course, we must be not only strong, but that if we are to gain release from the wheel of karma, we must do that battle with our egoic tendencies. It's interesting, if Jesus or Krishna were to give that teaching today, and if there were to be the usual swarm of media in attendance, it would probably be sensationalized into a couple of bulletins or 10-second promos, and I mean, you can just see it. This just in, Jesus says he carries a sword and he intends to use it. Details at 11. And of course, we would all tune in, and there would be undoubtedly the usual tangle of interpretations, most of which, maybe all of which, would miss the point entirely. Tangles of interpretation about nearly everything are what make this world, at times, a rather dangerous and scary place. Isn't that true? You think about the politics of the situation. The real problem is that most people, and probably all of us at some times, live on the surface of understanding, and thus we misunderstand what is true and what isn't. We are also pretty famous for misunderstanding what works and what doesn't at times. Witness, for example, the effect worldwide of our so-called political solutions. You know, I minored in college in political science, which to my chagrin has become just about my favorite oxymoron. Politics and science, there really is no relationship whatsoever. If politicians would simply retire from the process of trying to manage the world's affairs, I'm sure we'd all be much better off. But that's a rant for another day, perhaps. The upshot of failing to understand what is true and what isn't, and what works and what doesn't, is that we fail to eliminate the need to reincarnate. And the evidence is pretty obvious. We're all still here. We came back again. There is still something to learn, probably a lot of somethings. One of the problems that many of us have, and Tushti alluded to it, is that we have these emotional buttons, and we wear them just like the buttons on a shirt down the front of us. There's the anxiety button right about here, very popular at this time, the anxiety button. There's the feeling neglected button, always good for a little self-pity. The righteous indignation button, a perennial favorite, and so on, you know, down the line. To a great extent, you know, what happens when these buttons are pushed is that we react. Blood pressure goes up, and the wisdom of pausing to reflect for a moment goes right out the window. To a great extent, these reactive habits of ours are responsible for us having, to a great extent, turned this beautiful earth into something that often resembles an insane asylum run by the inmates. Thank goodness, at least, for a sense of humor. But the point is that it does take a sword. It takes a sword of discrimination, and it does take courage. It takes the courage of conviction if we are to essentially overcome those egoic forces within us, to use that sword against those egoic forces. And until we do, there really can be no peace within us. And consequently, there cannot be sustainable peace anywhere in the world. Now, if any of this sounds at all preachy or pretentious on my part, believe me, I need the pep talk as much as anyone. I still have plenty of those emotional buttons in my arsenal of self-righteous behaviors, and some of them are sewn on pretty tight. But, you know, Gandhi advised us to be the change that we want to see in the world. And to know how to do that, you need to look no farther than the life of Swami Kriyananda. For 60 years, he has modeled for us exactly what we need to do to achieve our greatest potential and our greatest potential joy. We admire him enormously, and we're grateful for the example he has given us, for the support he has given us. And then comes the but. But I'm really busy. Or how about, I don't think my family would disapprove. Or my situation is different. I'm sure you've heard lots of those buts. Maybe you've used a few of them. I have at times. And again, it's that sort of discrimination that can cut through that. Victory demands the courage of conviction. That was the talk this morning. There's no slack in that statement. It's not a part-time job. But let me share with you something that has been very helpful to me, a truth that has been very helpful to me in that. And I offer this to you. It sounds perhaps a little ridiculous at first, but when you reflect on it, it really offers a lot of comfort. What matters, what happens to us, does not matter. Whatever the outward circumstances, however cruel or unfair they may seem, no matter who is to blame, no matter the hardship it may cause, what happens to us does not matter. The only thing that matters is how you deal with what comes your way and what you become as a result. This is really all that ever matters. And it's really just about doing the best that you possibly can. Think about it. What other currency of genuine value is there? Generosity, love, service, forgiveness, self-forgetfulness. These are the coins of our redemption, as we say in the Festival of Light. Yet, these are not the ones that we always reach for first when the heat is on. It can be a little difficult at times. But be assured that taking that moment to reflect before reacting can just make a world of difference in your life. Master Yogananda had a two-word philosophy that can be applied to absolutely every situation. He said, love God. What does that mean? Is it just a high-minded ideal? God is not a person or a thing. What is there to love? I have wrestled with this for many years, mainly because the answer is so overwhelming. To love God is to love everything. Now, if that isn't a daunting task, I don't know what is. But I know that we can all deal with it a step at a time. Just a step at a time. Someone once said, anything worth not doing is worth not doing well. Well, how about if we practice each day just not doing one little thing that interferes with our higher attunement? And let's really try to not do it really well. Above all, just do your best. And when you lose your focus, do as we were taught in meditation, just bring it back to the mantra. And in this case, the mantra is your conviction, your faith in the teachings that we have been given. Relax, breathe, smile, and just get back in the game. Exercising the courage of conviction is a serious business, but we can also enjoy it as well. Courage is one of those qualities that just works a whole lot better when you're light on your feet, light of mind, and light-hearted. So think light. It is, after all, the essence of what you are. And all you have to do is remember to become it. God bless.